The sound of breaking glass sliced through the calm suburban air. A woman in her late 50s, Judith Langley, president of the Ridgeview Estates HOA, stood frozen on the porch of a modest brick house she had no right to enter. Her hand trembled on the doorknob as she peered inside, muttering under her breath about regulations and property standards. She had done this before, many times, but today something was different. The house she was trespassing wasn't just any house. It belonged to Marcus Reed, a quiet, dignified black man who had moved in just 3 weeks ago and whose calm presence somehow made Judith's authority feel fragile. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The sun was dipping low, painting the white fences gold. Judith's heels clicked on the floor as she stepped inside, her nose wrinkling. She saw the polished furniture, the family photos of Marcus in uniform, U.S. Air Force, and a framed certificate for community service. Everything about the place radiated respect and order. But Judith didn't see that. She saw defiance. She saw someone who hadn't asked her permission. She told the board he was disruptive, though he hadn't even spoken at the meetings. She'd said she was checking for code violations, but she was really checking for control. As she opened a drawer and rifled through papers, she muttered, "You think you can move in here and do as you please." Then a shadow crossed the doorway. Marcus stood there, broad-shouldered, calm, his expression unreadable. "Looking for something?" His voice was deep, steady, and far too polite for the situation. Judith's throat tightened. "I was just conducting an inspection. As HOA president, it's my responsibility to—" He stepped closer, slowly. "Inside my house? Without consent?" The air between them thickened. Outside, a few neighbors had gathered, whispering from across the street. The wind rustled through the maple trees, carrying tension like static. Judith adjusted her blouse, forcing a brittle smile. "Well, if you've got nothing to hide, then there's no problem, right?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "There's a problem, ma'am. You just broke the law." Her confidence faltered. "Excuse me. I already filed a complaint," he said. "I had a feeling this might happen." He motioned toward a small security camera blinking red above the doorway. "You're being recorded." Judith's face drained of color. The neighbors began murmuring louder. Some had their phones out. The HOA queen who'd bullied half the block was now caught trespassing, caught red-handed inside the home of a man she'd been trying to push out. But Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. Instead, he walked to a drawer, pulled out a white envelope, and placed it gently on the table between them. "You might want to read this." Judith hesitated, then snatched it open, her eyes scanning the document. Her breath caught. It was her own eviction notice. Filed that morning. Signed by the board, her knees almost buckled. What is this?" she whispered. Marcus met her gaze, his expression steady but not cruel. "You forgot the HOA doesn't belong to you," he said softly. "The board voted yesterday. They saw the footage you've been hiding, footage of you harassing residents, trespassing, misusing funds. You were removed from office. That's your notice to vacate the HOA-owned property by next week." The crowd outside fell silent. Judith's lips trembled, her face pale and empty of the smug superiority she wore like armor. For the first time in years, she looked small. I was just trying to keep things in order," she stammered. "This neighborhood," Marcus cut in, his tone still calm but edged with quiet authority. "You were trying to keep people in their place. There's a difference." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't expect. "You don't understand. I built this community." "No," Marcus said. "You controlled it. But a community isn't built on fear, Judith. It's built on respect." He opened the door and stepped aside. "You should leave." She stood motionless for a long moment, her chest heaving. Then, without another word, she walked past him, her heels clicking slower this time. The neighbors parted silently, some turning away, others watching with quiet satisfaction. As she passed through the gate, Judith glanced back once more, She saw Marcus on the porch greeting a little girl next door who waved shyly at him. He smiled, knelt to her level, and handed her a paper bag of cookies he'd baked earlier that day. It was that small act of kindness, the same kindness she'd ignored in him, that finally broke her. Days later, the neighborhood began to change. The walls she'd built, literal and social, started to come down. Marcus was invited to lead the next community meeting. And for the first time, Ridgeview Estates began to live up to its name, a place with a view worth keeping. Because justice doesn't always come with noise or vengeance. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wrapped in calm dignity, holding the mirror steady until the truth reflects back. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back, and when it does, even the coldest hearts must face the warmth they once denied. If you felt this story, hit subscribe and share your thoughts below. I read every comment, and who knows, your story might just inspire the next one.